Welcome to our Empower Today podcast. We've been thinking this week in our service and today about valleys, and Jesus told a parable. A parable means a simple story laid alongside a deep truth. So you think, oh, that's a nice story, and then all of a sudden in your heart, soul and mind it goes boom, and you think, well, actually that has massive life-changing implications. And he told the parable of the Good Samaritan. It takes place in a valley that has a steady descent going from Jerusalem down to Jericho. And he said it because somebody said to him, who's my neighbour? And before that they'd said, what are the greatest commandments? And Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul and mind, and love your neighbour as yourself. And they said, well, who is my neighbour? And Jesus said, a guy was on a trip and he got beaten up by robbers and thieves, which was common in that valley, and left for dead. And then a couple of religious leaders come along separately and they see what's happened and they go on the other side, because for Jewish people to touch a dead body would make you ritually unclean. And so the first religious leader is thinking, if I touch him and he's dead, because I'm trying to help him, I'll be ritually unclean and I won't be able to fulfil my religious duties. He wasn't being mega negative. One writer has proposed that the second religious leader, who's slightly lower than the first one, maybe saw the first religious leader walk past, and so he thinks, well, if my boss, as it were, is doing that, then I should do the same. How often do we follow people because we respect them? Quite often, I would suggest. And so maybe both their actions were slightly more innocent than they'd been seen to be. And then along comes a Samaritan, and the guy that was beaten up was a Jew, and Jewish people and Samaritans were enemies. Samaria was right in the middle of the Jewish people's country, and religious leaders, rather than going through it, would go all the way around. This makes Jesus' visit with the woman at the well in Gospel of John all the more dramatic, that Jesus would sit with her and talk with her. As one American preacher said, Jesus doesn't build walls, he sits down at wells with people. He doesn't create barriers, he removes them. This Samaritan is walking past, and all of the hearers would have thought, well, if the two religious honchos didn't stop, then there's no way this scummy Samaritan's going to stop. But Jesus says it's the Samaritan that stops. It's the Samaritan that helps the man, puts him on his donkey, tends his wounds, takes him to a hotel, gives money and a bit more just in case he needs to stay longer, and says he'll come back to help him. And at the end, Jesus says to the person who'd asked the question, who is my neighbour? Who do you say is his neighbour? And it's really interesting, the guy can't even say Samaritan, he says the one who helped him. Because sometimes we're so entrenched in our valleys and our narrow views and we can't look outside them. Barbara Brown Taylor, a wonderful preacher in my opinion, said the Good Samaritan is the person who you would hate to wake up from a coma and they're giving you CPR. They're trying to save your life and you're still repulsed by it. Interestingly, the title we give, the Good Samaritan, doesn't say that in the actual gospel. Jesus just talks about a neighbour. He doesn't even say the Samaritan is good. He's just a Samaritan. So as we walk through the valleys of life, where we're rubbing up against Samaritans, where we need the help of Samaritans, will we be bold enough to ask for it? And more than that, will we love our neighbour? That neighbour that is always loud, that neighbour that has broken so many of the rules that have been placed on us in COVID-19, that neighbour who wounded our pet, that neighbour that we've never got on with. Will we love our neighbour as we love ourselves? Because then we're really loving God.